All right. What's happening, by the way? Um, Probably not. I think I can just speak. So, what am I speaking about?
About the project, about your life.
All right.
How's your day been?
They've been interesting. I got a chance to walk around Lviv for an hour and a half. So it's just a beautiful cities. It was very nice. What is Sotli? Is what I wanted to start in. And I think the thing I want to start is essentially, as a startup, how did I get started? Maybe just the story of that could hopefully it can inspire somebody. I think that'd be great. So my background is long time ago. I was an electronic engineer, trying to learn chip design and whatnot, and then I got inspired by when I do the chip design, why certain decisions get made in terms of technology wise, you understand it, how to do it, but then beyond that, what decisions get made and why somebody builds something. So I was curious about that. Then that's when I realized I got to understand the other side of it, which is the business side of it. So that's when I did my own, I wanted to do MBA, so I did my MBA. And then I went to chip company, of course, Intel, for a while, trying to understand how they sell. I was at living in Hong Kong. One thing I claim to fame is, have you heard of the internet firewall in China? I was one of the guys who did the deal for them. People hate me for that, but I was one of the guys who sold those chips for them. But they didn't tell me at that time. It was probably a few thousand Itanium processors. Each Itanium processors cost about a few $1,000s each. So it was a huge amount of Itanium processors. And then we sold. After selling, then they tell us that it's for firewall. We're going to firewall the whole country. So it was, I don't know, it's awful, but it was a good deal for Intel, I guess. So then from there I moved to the Silicon Valley, which is the place for startups, right? So I moved there. I got to when I went to Bay Area, I got a chance to do a lot of presentations to the CEO, Intel CEO back when he was there, and now the current CEO I used to work on a regular basis. So it was very good. Things were going really good. And then that's when you leave, right? Because if you get too comfortable in one place, and that's when you got to see what's out there. And being in Bay Area, I mean, you get inspired by all the things that are going outside. So that's when I said, okay, it's great time for me to say bye-bye to Intel. And it was at the time where the division was kind of reducing down. Even though they didn't fire me, but I said, this is my time to just get out and then see for myself. So I packed my bag, left Intel, and then I was looking for a new idea to what is the next big idea to work on. So people's things is where I started. So it's like these are the people's things. I want to keep track of it. I want to understand what people store and create a product that addresses people's emotional connection to physical things, and that's where Sotli started. Learned iOS coding after that. Even though I was a business guy for 7-8 years, I started iOS coding, learned iOS coding. Religiously attended the Stanford class that they put it online. Attended that for a while. Wrote my code. Joined a startup as an engineer for work there just to understand how startups work. Joined a very small startup. I was like the 10th engineer there. Left there. With that experience, I actually ended up at Apple working for a consulting project at Apple, which Apple announced on stage. So it's a project where it's a medical app. So Apple announced about 5 medical apps from Stanford, Harvard, and big names. So I was actually the architect of all the 5 apps there. I met Kevin Lynch, the guy who announced Apple Watch. So we met with him, like 3 people, just Kevin Lynch, myself, and my boss. It was very prestigious for me to, as a contractor, you just go and meet with such high people. It was very inspiring. And then, but always working on Sotli at all the time, behind what are the business models? How do I great companies, and at the same time, I was working with you guys in creating the web app while I was working for Apple, and left Apple while still working with you guys. I joined DJI, which was another very good inspiration in terms of what we did there. DJI, if you don't know, is a drone company. It's a largest drone company in the world. It's a Chinese company, and literally we started the Palo Alto office for them. My boss was ex-Apple director, so we started working with them. I hired some of the best engineers that you can find in the Bay Area. From just 2 people to me. When I left, it was about 30 people. That was earlier this year. We had the best engineers. We released the SDK. When we released the SDK today, pretty much all the large companies, including Microsoft, Adobe, you name it, any startup, large startup, any small drone companies, they all use this SDK to develop drone apps. So that's the kind of story. But all the while working on Sotli and working on Sotli at all times. And earlier this year, I decided this is it. I wanna make Sotli big. So I started working full time in there, and started working closely with you guys. We got funding, and here we are, 6-7 months later. Do you guys have any questions?
Sorry about that. That was my laptop.
Okay.
Anything else? It's a long story. Sorry about that.
Can I ask where you get your education? Where you get your base for all your knowledge for sorting, for drones, for all the things?
I mean, education is just back in India. I did electronics engineering, and then I did MBA back in India as well. Interestingly enough, the school where I started, it's called Indian School of Business. This was I was the second batch out of that college, and it was started by prestigious institutions from the US. So it was Wharton, London Business School, and a couple of others. So it was a good school to go to. So that kind of opened doors for me in terms of joining Intel and other places.
How did you get your first customers on board?
How did I get my first customers?
Yeah. So, and how did sort of appear in the top of the Apple Store?
Sure. So it's one of those things, right, where you do some little tricks and it's never cause and effect. I think that's the craziest thing. You really you got to try a lot of things, but you never know what will cause a result. And it's one of those things where I accidentally, when I introduced in the App Store, I introduced with a price, and all I did is for one day I dropped the price and said, "This is free app." That's it. For some reason, it was listed everywhere and I did one marketing trick. I said, it's limited for free. It's limited time for free. So then some listing agencies picked it up. So I got the first day and I put it in the App Store. I got about 25,000 downloads. So it picked up from there, and after that, then it got us into the foothold, and it became top 50 productivity apps just on the first day alone. And back then it was 2012 I'm talking about, so App Store was not that big, so it fed itself from there. And then from there it's interesting. So at that time it was my thing, so it's a search engine only, but then when I started seeing how people are using it, the most interesting thing was gamers. Who would have thought gamers would use it? Gamers were using, in Japan and all these places, they have these different game characters with, weapons and all the parameters. People are using Sotli to keep track of all these parameters and how people use this. So it's like, this gun has this much power, this gun has this less power, and then how much I want. It was like, okay, come on. I mean, I didn't build for this, but hey, thank you. So it was, and for me, this long I've been going just because of our customers. And if you go look at our reviews, it's always been 5-star reviews. And thankfully, and I think that's what has been. And if I speak to our customers regularly in terms of how they use, how they, and one of the I have a bad story as well, just to see how things go. So this is one time. Um, I was always whenever I travel, I have a Facebook issue. Whenever I travel, that's when something bad happens. When I was traveling on the road, somebody lost the data. Somebody lost the data that they put in Sortly, and this is the reason why I do what I do. So this person is actually a cancer patient who's about to die. He stored all his data to leave it to our parents or whatever or who are relatives. He lost all his data. And he's calling me, and then he was a little bit rude as well. He's saying, I'm about to die. I'm going to make a big splash about how you lost my data in a press and blah, blah, blah. And I had to take this call while I'm traveling, like in LA, where, the phone connection is not good. And this guy's like yelling at me. And I cannot talk back to him. It's like, you feel sorry for him. But at the same time, it's the bugs. Bugs happen, software, that's the big reason why. That's when we realize, how to protect data, because that's when you also realize how much you affect people's lives. I mean, it's like that's his end of the thing that he's leaving behind. So that's one big learning for us too, and that's when we started doing a lot of backups and whatnot. It was a long answer, but
Yeah.
that helped.
And actually, any luck with storing the data?
Yeah, what happened in the end?
Yeah.
I asked him to do it again. So this is one of those learnings, right, where it's just an app. I never had a cloud in the back end, so it was just an app. And the core data back then was not very reliable. The database that we store data was not reliable. It got corrupted. So I had no way of telling what really happened, and there's no cloud, so I cannot even restore his data. So just disappeared.
Was it okay in the end?
Yeah, and then he was, and then I just gave him his money back. It's like I actually literally wired, even though Apple took the money, I literally wired my money back to him, saying at least thank you for whatever, sorry for the trouble. So that's when I actually learned Ruby on Rails. After that, and did the
Nice,
backend.
thank you.
That was the case.
That was the case. That's when I got inspired by so we got to have cloud for this, and that's when I put the cloud back in.
Cool.
Dhanush, I already asked you this question, but how to raise the money for your application at Bay Area?
I think there are a lot of different ways, and I think the way easiest is what everybody would suggest is find angel investors. I mean, friends and family. So nowadays, see, the thing nowadays, the software is becoming so cheap to build to get going. So with your simple salary, if you're in a place, you can start the prototype just with your simple salary of doing it, investing in a small amount of money. Start with your own, just to identify it and see if it's worth investing larger. You can easily build an app for, I'm just making stuff up here, from tens of thousands of dollars to $50,000 to depending on if you want to just start a prototype that's you can do it even much smaller than that. So start with that and get a few customers, see what they say, and I'm sure there's Eric Ries and others books do agile startups. So just learn and go. So with that, and then you go to angel investors. There are angel forums. So there are the good thing about Bay Area, and this is what I think slowly Bay Area is teaching other parts of the world to do this as well, which is creating these networks of angel investors, like successful entrepreneur, like Ivan would want to next time invest another budding entrepreneur. So that's what Bay Area, essentially all the Facebook guys, initial Facebook guys, they all now investors. So essentially they have a fund sitting somewhere, and they talk to these customers, and they find inspiring, so they just invest in you. It's always challenging. It's for me the challenging part is the time it takes. It's just finding, if you have somebody immediately, that's actually it's easier. But if you don't have it, sometimes you would waste, because all these people are very, very busy. So it'll take a bit of time. It's the question of whether you have that time to spend and then go shop around. And for me, how Sortly is invested is actually Sortly is invested through our customers. all of it initially from one of our customer approached us and said, we have this problem, and then hey, here's our money, please create the solution, we love it. Two, the second round, which we just closed, also the same case. I just sent out an email to our customers saying, this is Sortly, we are raising fund, do you want to be part of our journey? A couple of customers from UK, they responded to us saying, yeah, I love the product and we want to be invested in you. So it was very easy for me to do that because we have a good product, we have proven it, and thanks to you guys, you guys did definitely play a part in it as well and impressing those customers. So.
Thank you.
Anush, was there an inspiration for the project for Sortly?
I think to me, it's that finding a product that addresses the emotional connection to people's things. I don't know if you've seen a show in the US. It comes and it's called Hoarders or something, where in the US people collect enormous amount of things and then they store, and then afterwards they have no idea what they have, and it's a bigger problem in Middle America, where in the middle of Midwest, etc., where they have huge garages, so they store a lot of things. So how can we address it is where I started, and then from there, the name Sortly was interesting. I hired a branding agency, and then I said, I want a name that's short. I want a name that has no meaning, also, so that I can build whatever I want and assign any meaning to it. And at the same time, but it has to inspire something. So Sortly came from there, and I'm sure you've seen the logo as well. It's Sort Your Life. So that's where it came from.
Another funding question to be honest. I know you bootstrapped your startup from the very beginning. Would you do it differently if you had the opportunity again?
If I know now this is the market, I would immediately go to the funding people and the investors, and then do it. So I would have done the initial prototype myself. Either I wouldn't have learned iOS, I probably have hired, but I also was eager to learn, so that I would have done it. But I think once the prototype is done, because once you need to bring money only if you believe that there is a business model to be had. It's not the technology, it's the business model. And for us, we are proven. So essentially, it's about, if you can scale it, if it works in a small level, you put money into it, it can grow the same way. And that's when you put money into it. And so once I'm convinced of it, I would go to investors now and push harder. Exactly. I would think that I am in the Bay Area standards. I'm actually very conservative when it comes to the other thing is what does your competition do? And for us, thankfully, there was no competition. We are still #1 app in the App Store. So for me, there's no push that I have to do tomorrow, otherwise somebody will take my business, kind of a thing. So.
I have a question. Sure. Well, right now, Sortly is a successful app, and we hope it will be more successful in the future. But I believe maybe sometimes there were hard times. Have you ever had thoughts like, maybe I should leave this, maybe it will be more like better decision to leave it like that and like go and work for someone else? So if you have these feelings, what kept you going and growing Sortly and working harder to defeat those how to say that, doubts? Yeah.
Sure. I did leave Sortly, by the way. So when I did just before DJI, at every point I was working on Sortly for a few months here and there, and then I was going back to work. And for me, it's always about the customers. It's nothing else, just the customers alone. Customers alone, and also free press. I mean, whenever I would say, okay, I want to do something else and learn more, and it's also good opportunities that working at DJI, etc., gives me contacts in the Bay Area, etc. But it's always about those customers that always brought me back. It's about those customer stories. I have a million stories like this I can tell. One other thing, if you want to get inspired, and if it doesn't leave the room, you know the actor Iron Man actor? He uses Salt Lake.
Robert Downey Jr.?
Yes.
He uses Salt Lake?
Yes.
Wow.
All right. So now you can feel good about working on Salt Lake. So they use Salt Lake.
What about this issue
We need social.
we had with Robert Downey in the summer?
Yeah, that's the downside of the story as well. So they were pissed off about something, and we kind of addressed it. We said, do reset it, and it went away after that. And now, yeah. And now Airbnb uses, I don't know if I was sharing with our team, so Airbnb uses Salt Lake, Twitter uses Salt Lake, and we got free press most of the time. It's I never approached them. I have presses from all over the world. New York Post, during Hurricane Irma, I was telling others, during hurricane season in the US just happened, national TV said, use Salt Lake to keep track of your things. So in case, hurricane blows away your stuff, you can at least have a digital copy of it. So that's what kept me going.
Great, thank you.
Danny, what is your favorite feature of Sort app?
It's not built yet. It's not built yet. But I think the one that I'm proud of is this feature. Though I spent enormous amount of time coding it because as a coder I loved it, and I had a lot of fun with it. Which is you take a picture, and what you can do is and you can put highlighting in this. It's very similar to other apps, and it actually you can't see it, but it turns the background into black and white, while the highlighted part is actually in color. And you can put arrows in this to pinpoint any specific object in the photo. We never did it in other apps. Now in Salt Lake Pro and we never spec'd it out. But this is something that I was proud of initially. And for me, I said we are not built it yet. It's these kind of things in terms of working more with photographs and working more with AI technologies, object recognition, and all of that is what I think we need to be going forward. And we already have built some prototypes, etc., that on Google Vision APIs and whatnot. So those are probably I would want to love more in the future. Yes.
So, from what you have told, you're doing a lot of things. So, my question is, how do you find time for all this stuff? There's a lot of stuff to do.
It's about focus.
Are you sleeping?
No.
Yeah, I guess as a startup, I think the one thing that takes toll is your sleep. I think the one thing I have my priorities straight, and the one. It's good or bad. I don't have any kids, so Salt Lake is kind of my kid at this point, at least. But I do have priorities, which is I do give one day to my wife. I have to give, otherwise.
1 day per week.
One day per week. One day per week. One day per week. 1 day per week is a lot. Trust me. When it comes to Salt Lake, I do. So that keeps me sane. That keeps me sane at home, and that she keeps me sane as well in that aspect. But I think it's about prioritizing. I think it's becoming a point where I need more people and marketing and all of that. We just hired a full-time marketing person in the team, and then so it's slowly going there. But it's about prioritizing. It's about what is the fire of the day, and then put out that fire, and then wait for the next fire. So.
We have a question from another audience.
I'll read it for you. The name of the person is Alex, and he's asking, how do you see the future of your app? Do you have do you have certain plans of how to scale your product?
Sure. I think for me, this is essentially So there's a short-term answer and a long-term answer. The short-term answer is all of those names that I mentioned, Airbnb, and there's a lot of companies. They are just waiting for Sortly Pro. So I spoke to the purchasing manager of Airbnb, and he's like, when is it ready? So it's all about us in the team executing on it. So essentially with that, and I had a call yesterday with another moving company. It's a 100-year-old company who sells moving equipments to moving companies, essentially the boxes and etc. So they are ready to partner with Sortly to sell Sortly to all the moving companies in the US. So they want to sell the labels. So these labels that you see everywhere, these are Sasha will tell you that it's actually pain in the rear to print it out and put it in. So what that company will do is that will have already printed labels. So they'll have already printed QR codes that they are going to sell, and as an incentive for them to sell more, they want to sell Sortly as well. So essentially, short term, we are going to be a SaaS business in the short term. In the longer term, I want to be a marketplace in the sense of now that you have all your inventory in it, we want to sell moving services. I can find you moving company to do moving. I can find you insurance companies to do insurance on it. Inheritance planning. Now that you have all these things, you want to split between your brothers, and so find lawyers to do that. So all of that is what we are hoping to do. Anything to do with your physical things, I want to be the guy doing it for you.
And there's your slogan.
Probably. All right,
Okay,
that's
guys,
probably the thing.
One last question.
Yes.
Do you believe in AI? Because so many focus on Elon Musk and other guys.
So interestingly, when I was an engineer, I did a lot. I actually did one of the premier institutes in India. I did a lot of AI research. This was back when it was called AI, it was just neural networks. So I know enough to say that it all depends on what you build. So the answer to that nowadays, saying is, custom built, custom focused AIs, the neural networks, and solving specific problems is a good thing, as opposed to there is general deep learning systems which are much more dangerous. I don't know enough about them to comment on it, but for me, I see AI as the future for Sortly. I want to see the AI. Our problems are actually very unique in the sense that I don't need to worry about. I'm worried about only objects in photographs. I'm worried about specific objects, and I want to identify them. So I want to build as we scale, as we do both consumer businesses, as we scale. I want to invest heavily on AI to build very specific technologies, IPs for Sortly, so we can make the input process even faster and easier.
Okay, yeah, that was the last question. We thank you for your time.
Section